Colin with this question about 10K HP.
All right. So what I've done is put together some thought into what I want the next steps of my career to look like. And I'm struggling a little bit with the talent triangle, like skills analysis piece and kind of where to go with that. And so I'd love to share what I've been working on and just kind of get some feedback on maybe how to continue this thought process. So hopefully you're seeing this screen just to walk through a little bit of where my head is right now, right? So we've got the 10K framework. I think I've got a pretty good idea of the game and role side of things, and approaching that with a couple of your questions. So what would I be doing if I didn't need the money? I definitely continue to be learning. I love finding out new things. I'd be helping others to do their best work, but particularly at a systematic level, thinking about how do we create the structures that make it easier for people to develop as opposed to just working with folks one-on-one. And then enhancing my field with the best ideas from other disciplines. I'm really good. We'll talk about this a little bit with the talent piece, but I'm very good at taking an idea and saying, like, they do this thing in medicine. That makes sense over here, or here's a really cool idea that I picked up from manufacturing that works in producing talent or something like that. Win conditions, like long term, I want to be a leading practitioner in the talent space, whether that's talent development, talent strategy, not quite sure like where exactly it's going to end up, but things I think it would indicate I've gotten there is that I'm a published author in the space and I'm sought after a speaker or panelist at national scale events. In the short term, I want to try to build what my niche is. I'm able to pretty consistently lead initiatives that create about $1 million a year in benefit for the organization. If I look at like the leadership development programs or like accelerating onboarding, things like that, I'd love to figure out how I can scale that so I'm having a $10 million a year impact, and then better define what my professional point of view is so I can start figuring out what I would be the leading practitioner of as I go towards that long-term journey. I try to think about who else is playing a similar game and just to kind of frame out what success might look like. Some of the people that came to mind, I've got, Doug Lemov. He is the managing director at Uncommon Schools, which is a private school network that's focused on low-income children. They've taken some incredible academic gains as a result of how they focus on improving teachers, but he hasn't gone off and just become a consultant on that. He's stayed within his organization, has published within there, has done a lot of organic research and shared it with a broader audience. Patty McCord, the former chief talent officer at Netflix, is another person I think of. She's working within a company, but creating this model of here's what our organization's culture is going to be and how it's going to drive our business. Really becomes someone who's sought after to be on those panels to talk about like how do you drive an organization forward, things like that. And then Christopher Lind, a leader in the learning technology space, continuing to lead his function at his company, ChenMed, rather than being an independent consultant, but also has developed a podcast, has created some communities around that. Really, if you've got a question about learning technology, he's the guy you go to. And then thinking about who's not playing the game that I want to be playing, I think about people like Liz Wiseman, really respected leadership development consultant. She, had a space where she was working within her organization when she was at Oracle, but then she went off and hung out her own shingle. That's not the direction that I see myself going. I'm just not good at entrepreneurship. I did my own consulting for a while and it was awful. And similar thing with David Marquet, the former captain of the USS Santa Fe, did some amazing cultural change within his organization, started becoming a speaker and presenter that was called upon a lot. Then when he went into retirement and just started doing that full time, that's not the direction that I want to go. I want to continue to make an impact within my business. So that's kind of some framing pieces. And then, so what did I find when I started to map out my skill set? And this is where I got a little bit confused, like what should go in the talent triangle versus what's, a skill piece of it, and then how to think about filling in the gaps here. And so this is where I'm looking for you to really react and give some direction in how I think. I'm one of the best in the world at understanding what the literature says on something. I consume over 120 books a year. I read. I've got great notes from all of these. I've got a research database that's fast approaching 20,000 notes. I know what people say on different topics. I'm very ahead of the curve on self-development. I'm being able to break down skills, analytical thinking, and being able to transfer things between contexts, being able to generalize and say, it's not just about what you did in this particular environment, this lesson applies in different spaces. I'm pretty good at being innovative, figuring out how to build something myself as opposed to having to buy it. And sometimes scrapping something together that's a good enough substitute. Pretty good at learning design, instructional design. I'm very curious. Really, I've got some strengths in mastering technology. Learn a new tool and figure out, okay, how can I automate it? How can I leverage this in different places? And then I'm pretty good at things like coaching. Certainly credit to you, gamification, behavioral design, data-driven decision making, public speaking, continuous improvement, systems thinking, those sorts of things. And then if I think about where I am, compared to both my profession and in the overall world, I think I'm, at the top of the game in terms of leadership development, instructional design. I'm better than most of the people out there, but I know this in my smaller pool of people who are working in the talent development space, not quite the top 2% there. There's some folks who are really good in that small pool. Behavioral design on the flip side, right? I'm definitely stronger than the vast majority of people in my profession, but in the overall world, I know there's folks that you've worked with that are would put me to shame. And so I've got some room for growth there. Same thing on data analytics. I'm good for a learning professional. I'm not yet at the top compared to people who do this, data for a living. Public speaking, I think there's room for growth in both of those areas. Systems thinking, there's some room for growth in terms of the overall population, although it's a relative strength in my discipline. Continuous improvement, I know more than most learning professionals, but there's people who just live and breathe this stuff. Project management is an area where I can get more experience in both of those things. Coaching, I'm pretty good overall, but there's some great people in my profession who I don't yet hold a candle to. I'm a better writer than folks in my field. I'm not a better writer than a lot of published authors out there. And then business acumen, again, I'm pretty good for a learning professional guy. I'm not yet at the level of someone who works at an investment bank or things like that. So that's a lot of kind of thinking about just trying to map out where I am. And I guess I'm looking for some input on what are the next steps I should be taking in order to try to figure out where my career breakthrough is going to be or how to take that next space in the journey.
So what's interesting here is if you look at the overall world, there are three things, right? And there's specifically there are two things that you feel like you're good in the world, but not necessarily in your profession. And I think those are opportunities where you mix match that, hey, some of these things are not a common skill in this field, but then I have the skill. I know that was amazing, but don't forget to watch the next video.